Hey, it's me, Vicky Marie. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in this crazy world. Now, I've not got much time because I'm in the middle of Spanish classes, but I wanted to come on and just do a brief video just to remind us all, just to remind you that I have not forgotten about Nancy Guthrie. Nancy's case is still unsolved, and we're waiting, aren't we, every day? Nearly 4 months now, isn't it? It was January, end of January, last day in January. We're now coming up to May. This is a long time for a case like this to be unsolved. So this poor lady, 84. Oh my God, 84 years old. Imagine getting to 84 years old and then getting kidnapped out of your bed in the middle of the night. You know, this is what always gets me. You go through all the trials and tribulations of life. Old age is a privilege denied to many, and Nancy has had that privilege. She's lived a long life. Hopefully, she's still living it, but doesn't seem very promising, does it? But she's had a lot of heartache in her life. You know, she's a lot of the normal things like losing her parents, but also she had a brother who was Down syndrome who she helped look after. She lost him. She lost her husband when she was only 46 years old and leaving her with 3 children to bring up. Teenagers, 2 of them teenagers. You know, she's had that led to financial difficulties, which she got through. And yeah, she's still living, or she was still living, in the house that she'd lived in for many, many years over there in Tucson, Arizona. And then one night, you know, this guy just decided, who we still don't know who he is, despite the fact we've seen video footage. This guy just turned up at her door and just took her with a weapon, rucksack, full rucksack, balaclava, rubber gloves. How terrifying that must have been for Nancy if she woke up in her bed to see this looking at her. Imagine how terrifying that must be. You know, that's what haunts me. Because I do feel that Nancy probably is no longer with us. So she's out of all the pain and the fear and the suffering. And yeah, she was 84 years old, but people live. She could have lived another 10, 50, couldn't she? You know, and she's been denied that. She's been denied her grandchildren, her children, who of course are adult children now. And they've been denied her, you know, having her there, because of this twonk, whoever he is. Who is he? Who is he, I wonder? So, yeah, she was taken in the middle of the night. There's been really no progress so far, but there may be some progress now. I mean, for God's sake, it's about time, isn't it? It's about time. There's something brewing. I don't know. Just feel it. I feel like the FBI is not looking for Nancy because they've got a suspect in mind. That's my personal opinion. And I think that the reason this case hasn't been brought to a resolution yet, I think it's because of this guy, Sheriff Nanas, you know, not cooperating with the FBI, sending the little bit of DNA they have got, the one hair or whatever it is they have got, sending it to his lab in Florida instead of sending it to Quantico. Now it's gone to Quantico, but we're looking at months down the line. If it turns out that the FBI finds something with this DNA, which apparently sources are saying progress is being made. I mean, you know, DNA, it takes a long time, especially if it's got to go for genealogical DNA testing, etc. But you know what? If this case is resolved due to now at last the DNA evidence going to the right place, I hope the family sue this guy. I hope they sue him. This little egotistical bloody, big I am. He needs to go, and he needs to be held accountable for everything that he's done wrong, because not only in the Nancy Guthrie case, but it turns out, of course, that Pima County, they're sick of him already. He's got a lot of skeletons in his closet. He's a liar. He lied on his resume. He's lied about a lot of things. He's been suspended 8 times, and he lied about being suspended. So he needs to go, whatever happens with Nancy. But I'll tell you what, if now this DNA being sent to the right lab means that now this case gets resolved, if I was Nancy's family, and this is her family, of course, we've got Annie and Tommaso, that's one of her daughters, and her husband, they've come under a lot of suspicion because they were the last people to see Nancy alive. And it may be grounded, we don't know, do we? They've been cleared by Sheriff Nanos, but how can you clear someone until you actually know who did it? I can't see you can clear people 100% really, especially if they didn't have an alibi. I mean, they're not going to have an alibi. They dropped Nancy off at home, according to them. They wouldn't have, I'm sure Tommaso didn't go off anywhere. They're probably alibying each other. But that's not, I'm not casting shade on them. I don't know who did it, but that's not proper alibi, is it? Really, a husband and wife alibying each other. Anyway, and of course, a lot of shade's been cast on them for various reasons, but the biggest reason is they are the last people to see Nancy alive. Nancy was at their house having dinner, playing games, apparently. Tommaso took her home, dropped her off. She went in through the garage door, which apparently was a common thing for her to do. And that was it. She was never been seen again, has she? So, you can see it's logical to suspect the last people that saw her alive. And then this is Nancy's other daughter, Savannah, the famous one. She's a presenter on the morning TV in America. She's gone back to work now, which some people think, how has she done it? But then what else is she going to do after 3 months? And it's not clear if she was, because we don't know what the reason that Nancy was taken for. She's an 84-year-old woman to be kidnapped. All the experts are saying that's really unusual to kidnap an elderly person like that. Although elderly people do get attacked, of course, and can be victims of burglaries and stuff. It's very rare to be kidnapped. Almost never happened. I'm not saying it's never happened, but, it's literally so rare for an elderly person to be kidnapped. So why would they kidnap Nancy? Now, if it was for money, fair enough, but they haven't had any money. We don't know. Is it a kidnapping gone wrong? Was it a burglary gone wrong? Was Nancy targeted for sex? These are all possibilities. The thing is, until we know actually what happened, we can't really say that nothing's possible. This is why I'm surprised that Nanos clearing the family and their spouses, because till you know who did it, how can you confirm who didn't do it? Do you know what I'm saying? Anyway, and this is Cameron. This is Nancy's son. He's a pilot. His sort of whole whereabouts seem to be unclear. Is it something to do with him? The thing is, Nancy is worth quite a lot of money. Who knows who was in her will, who was the house left to, what were the arrangements. Most, if Nancy has been red-rummed, these things are done for money. It's either money, love, custody battles. You know, these are the reasons that people kill each other, isn't it? You know, and whoever did this to Nancy took her in the middle of the night. And we're not sure how they got in there. We're not sure how they got out of there. There's the mysterious blood on the steps. That, you know, why did they take her out the front way? If the back doors were propped open, you know, it's mystery after mystery, isn't it? This case. I personally feel it's somebody who knew her, knew the house, knew her, not necessarily a family member. I'm not saying that. Could be anyone. Could be anyone who'd been to the house for whatever reason. Could be a cleaner. Could be a caretaker, caregiver. Could be a manicurist, a pedicurist. Could be a friend. Could be someone who's held a grudge against Nancy for 5 years, for all we know. Could be someone she borrowed money to, and maybe now she was saying she wanted it back. You know, we don't know, do we? Now, everyone's been very vociferous. All the FBI experts, ex-retired police officers, FBI, this, that, and the other. There's been so much talk about this case because this case is commanding all our attention because, you know, for the various reasons. One, because she's a vulnerable 84-year-old woman that could be our mum, our grandma, could be us when we're older. Could be us at any age. I mean, just the thought of anybody coming into your house, literally waking up in the middle of the night and there's a balaclavaed man with a gun looking over you. I mean, if you didn't have a heart problem, which Nancy did already have a heart problem, but if you didn't have one, you could still just have a heart attack, couldn't you? Just, you know, it's just unimaginable to think about it. And then, of course, we have Savannah saying that she was taken out of the house barefoot in her pajamas. How does Savannah know that? Why has that not been addressed? You know, how does Savannah know she was taken out of the house in her pajamas barefoot? You know, where has she seen more video? I mean, there'll be more video. All we've seen is the video of the guy you know, grabbing the flowers, walking up to the porch, etc. But there's bound to be more video. Maybe Savannah's seen more than us. Or maybe with the ransom notes, the ransom emails, maybe there was video sent or photos sent, you know, of Nancy, you know, was it one person? Was it more than one person? You know, that seems to be, some people are saying they think it was a lone wolf. Nanos said that. But, you know, you can't believe anything that Sheriff Nanos says because he contradicts it. You know, so everything he says is like white noise, isn't it? We wouldn't believe him now, I think, if he did a press conference and presented Nancy. It'd be like, oh, is it really Nancy? Because you can't believe a word a Sheriff Nanos says. Anyway, my money is still, I still not sure about this guy. This is one of the guys, Luke Daly, who was detained in the early days of the investigation. I'm still not sure about him. That interview he did where he was had about 20 layers of clothes on and he'd shaved all his hair off and his facial hair. I still got a thing about him. I don't know that I can't shake it off, that he had something to do with it. And I think it's somebody local. Now, where Nancy is, I have no idea. Anyway, just let me, there's a couple of you in the chat. Hi, Aristocrat. Oh, I can't read all that out. Hi, David. Hope you're all well. Thank you for watching. Thank you for liking. Please subscribe. And thank you to those who've bought me coffee, sent super stickers. Thank you to my members. Don't forget the members live on Thursday. Okay, so as I say, I feel like there's been the only people who aren't really talking about Nancy are the authorities themselves. They're saying nothing. I mean, the silence is deafening, isn't it? no information since that since the first couple of weeks when it was like frenzied, wasn't it? Two people detained, Luke and the other guy, Carlos, and it felt like, you know, the SWAT team was out, and there were press conferences, and we really felt. And then the video came out after Kash Patel released it, because don't forget, Donald Trump, he said, oh yeah, you know, the FBI will give all their attention to this matter, blah de blah de blah. So in those first fevered couple of weeks, uh, it really felt like it was going to be solved quick, didn't it? And then since then, really, apart from, as I say, you know, lots of podcasts, lots of retired FBI agents putting their two pennyworth in, lots of talk about Nanas and how, you know, useless he is, and now there's this campaign to remove him. But nothing really about the actual investigation. No more photos released from the CCTV. No vehicle has been identified, or at least as far as we know. And then all this thing about the DNA sent to the wrong lab. I mean, it was sent to it shouldn't have been sent to the lab in Florida when, you know, when a police chief has got the whole of the FBI resources at his disposal. Why would you send it to a different lab? Not saying anything against that lab. It's got a good reputation, of course. But it just seems logical that the place you would send it to is the FBI lab. Just, it's not, you know, it's like, it's a no-brainer, really, isn't it? But that's the trouble with Nanos, has got no brain, so that's why I did a no-brainer. Anyway, just let me read you this article out there. So I did, you know, I've been despairing, really, as you know, just the more this anxiety of what's happened to Nancy, you know, even though it's all the way over there in America, in Tucson, it could happen to anyone. How can an 84-year-old woman be just taken from her bed in the middle of the night? And, you know, 3-4 months later, nada, nothing, no arrests, you know. You know, they keep saying, sources keep saying, oh, no leads. I don't believe that. I think that there are leads. I think there is a suspect. And I think that's why there's, you know, the FBI aren't making appeals. Nobody's making appeals. Nobody is making appeals to find Nancy, even though it's a high profile case. So, you know, why is that? To me, it's because I do think they've got an idea of what's happened. I do believe that. Hi, Sean. Yeah, 100,000 Americans go missing each year. Yeah, but probably not plucked out of their bed. Probably not 84-year-old women, and probably not plucked out of their bed. Now, listen, elderly people do go missing. And normally it's like linked to dementia, isn't it? And things like wandering off in the middle of the night. That sort of thing happens. But they're at great pains to say that Nancy had not wandered off, that mentally she was very sound, and physically she wasn't good at walking, so she couldn't have walked far at all. So where did she go? You know, did they have a vehicle out there? How could that vehicle not have been captured if there was one? How could it not have been captured on video cameras? And I think, as I say, I do think that the FBI, at least the FBI, if not, you know, and of course they're working in tandem with the Sheriff's Department now, with a special unit dealing with it now. How can they not know anything? I don't believe it. I think they do know something, but do you know what? You've got to make sure, you know, that you've got everything in place I mean, they got their warrants. They must have had some probable cause against the two people that have been detained so far, because they did manage to get warrants to search their houses and detain them, but they haven't got enough to arrest them. So if they've not, so it could be that they were just in the area at the time and their phones, came up. But sure, why would they have to? You think, well, why didn't they just sort of go and, if somebody's phone came up as being in the area at the time, why didn't they just go to talk to them? Why did they have to send a SWAT team in and everything, make a big drama of it? I don't know, because they were doing door-to-door inquiries. I mean, it wouldn't have been, it wouldn't have been strange. I mean, anyone who lives in that area, they'd be expecting the police to call round and see if they'd seen anything new, anything. It's all very mysterious, isn't it? It's very mysterious. All these FBI, retired FBI people, all of them are saying they've never known a case like it. But first of all, it was a kidnap. It's unusual to kidnap an elderly person, for a start. I was watching somebody talking burglary rules in the kidnapper's playbook. If you're a kidnapper, first thing is you make sure you're kidnapping someone who's not going to die. Who's so ill, so old. Then the second thing is you keep it under cover, like they went to the media. This to me is what really strikes me as strange. Those kidnappers going to the media first with their ransom note. They wanted the media to talk about it. And to me, I think, well, if they wanted the media to talk about it, it's almost like they wanted it's like a distraction. So is it somebody just wants to make it look like a kidnapping? Because if it was a real kidnapper, surely they would go straight to the family or go straight to law enforcement, not to the media. Normally the first thing kidnappers say is, don't involve the media, isn't it? So I don't believe it was a kidnapping. I think it's been made to look as if it's kidnapping, but that's a distraction for the real reason why Nancy's disappeared. That's my opinion, my humble opinion. They went for Nancy, they took Nancy, and Nancy was the target. The question is, what for? I don't believe it was for money, because not for ransom money, unless it did just go wrong and she died as they were taking her out. But when you're taking an 84-year-old woman, whether she's got a pacemaker or not. That was the other thing that, like, these experts are saying. Your first, you've got to protect your assets. The person you kidnap, that is your asset. That is your key to the money. So you do everything you can to make sure they're okay. You wouldn't, unless Nancy put up a fight. That's the other thing, because although she might be 84 and she wasn't, I think she's not a skinny woman, but she's not very tall, etc. And obviously it's hard for an 84-year-old woman to fight a young fit guy, with a gun, of course. Maybe she did put up a fight. Maybe she did put up more of a fight. Maybe I do think that I would probably do that. Would say, well, you might as well shoot me here because you're not taking me out of my house. Because as soon as you go out of the house, really, it's game over, more or less. You don't know where they're taking you to. It's going to be worse than where you are at the moment, that's for sure. So for me, I'd be just like, oh, just shoot me now, because I would put up a fight. Now, of course, she probably wasn't that difficult to subdue because she's elderly. Maybe that's how the blood came. Maybe she was punched in the face. It doesn't seem that she was shot because there would have been more blood. Then there's the talk that inside was immaculate, inside the house was immaculate, etc. You know, just. And the thing about this hair as well that's gone off to the lab, we don't actually know that the hair is from the kidnapper. It's just a hair that it wasn't anybody who, who'd been sort of tested in that, where you might expect a hair to be there. And I believe it is a man's hair. So, but we don't actually know that it is the kidnapper's hair, do we? So, anyway, let me just read you this article on News Nation. I just needed to talk about Nancy again. And as I say, their source is saying there is progress. So we have to just hope that this is right. So, of course, now Brian Ensign, who is the News Nation reporter, but he also, of course, has his own show, his own podcast. He's back in Arizona again. So he was there, then he left, then he went back there, then he left again. Now he's back again. So this is the third time. Does he have any information that anything's going to break? I don't know. Anyway, he said, I spent several days in Tucson, Arizona this week talking to my sources about the Guthrie investigation. I wish he would say Nancy. He does say Guthrie a lot. A lot of the mainstream media, well, he's not technically mainstream media, but I wish they would stop saying Guthrie and use her name, her full name. Nancy Guthrie or just Nancy. News Nation will air a special on the Nancy Guthrie case May the 6th with senior national correspondent Brian Ensign. May the 6th, well, you know what? That's 8 days away. Hopefully, maybe something will have broken by then. I learned in recent weeks there have been complaints by some residents in Nancy Guthrie's neighbourhood that social media influencers, amateur journalists, and curious tourists were trespassing on private property, acting as morbid tourists. God, I know what they mean, and I understand that the neighbours are going to be. I wish the neighbours would get annoyed with the kidnappers, get annoyed with, the fact they're not safe in their own homes instead of getting annoyed with podcasters. I personally would rather have the podcasters there until this person is caught. When the person's caught, fair enough, you'd want to go back to normal. But until you know who it is and you know that they're safely behind bars where they can't harm anybody, why wouldn't you want them there? And why would you get angry with them? I just don't understand it. Anyway, Sheriff Chris Nanos responded to those concerns by increasing patrols in the area in an effort to make sure that members of the media did not trespass private property. God, one of the neighbours I spoke with told me, not me, this person who's writing this, told me that while some media members had overstepped, they felt that Nanos's concerns about the media were based on his concern over the negative media coverage that he's received. I think that's 100% right. Nanos does not want attention, neither by the media or by social media or by the FBI. He doesn't want attention because he's in a glass house. Nanos has faced criticism related to the Nancy Guthrie investigation and for reports he misrepresented his work history under oath and on his public resume when applying to Pima County Sheriff's Department. So let's go down. So Bob Kreigler, a retired law enforcement lieutenant and former SWAT commander for the Pima County Sheriff's Department, remains concerned there were early missteps by Nanos that had a negative impact on the investigation. honestly, if this now gets solved, I mean, I hope it does get solved quickly. But if I was Nancy's family, I would be suing that guy because he has held this investigation back. Anyway, Kriegler said, I believe he planned from the onset that the sheriff's department would solve this crime alone and they would get all the glory. His constant unwillingness to work with anyone has been an ongoing problem for years within the agency, and it's clear his ego in this instance had been a roadblock for investigators. What was the other thing he said? While I was in Tucson, I also learned that despite the sheriff's patrols targeted at trespassing journalists, the residents of Nancy's neighborhood, I'm putting Nancy and he's saying Guthrie, I wish they wouldn't do that, are uneasy and concerned about the failure to find a suspect in her abduction. The sheriff has stated it's possible the perpetrator might strike again. So that was the other thing he said, that he contradicted himself, because in the early days he said there was no wider threat to the public. Now he's saying, yes, they might strike again. You know, he talks a load of hogwash. So in his March 12th interview with NBC News, he stated that authorities believe she was targeted, but he also warned that no one should rule out the possibility that the suspect could strike again. Now, the thing is, if Nancy, there's no way that they're going to strike again in that area, are they? You know, let's be honest. I mean, all the fuss and they're not going to go in and take another 84-year-old lady, are they? You know, they're just not. Now, they may strike again somewhere else, I suppose. But if Nancy was targeted, why would they strike again? I don't know. Anyway, so there's some talk, of course, is this a gang that's done it, or is it one person operating solo? There's a massive reward. No one's come forward, as far as we know, to give information to claim over $1 million reward. So that suggests that nobody is going to come forward, but maybe eventually they will. I think this is Brian Ensign said, one of the neighbours told me that as a result of Nancy's kidnapping, people are living differently than before, installing cameras, watching for people in the area who look like they don't belong. And that's why, you know, they're going up to these podcasters and streamers. I'm wondering if Nancy's abductor and potential killer is living in their midst. I think 100% they're living in their midst. They're not going to be very far away, I don't think. They were so comfortable. You know, to be so comfortable, I think they knew that house. I think they know the area. It's pitch black. You know, that'd be a difficult place to navigate if you didn't know it. So the important bit is, as for the investigation into Nancy's disappearance, my sources claim there is progress being made in the investigation as relates to DNA. After hair evidence found in Nancy's house was sent to a lab in Florida that has a contract with the Pima County Sheriff's Department, the hair was transferred to the FBI lab in Quantico, finally, where it will undergo additional testing. So, who's this? Jim Clemente, who's a former FBI profiler, said that with no immediate match in the National CODIS database, I believe that investigators are utilizing forensic genetic genealogy to analyze DNA recovered from a hair at the scene to identify potential suspect. So let's just hope that they managed to do it. You know, this hair technology, it is new technology, because before a hair would have to have a root shaft on it for the DNA to be able to be obtained. It would have to have been pulled from the root. Now, of course, under, you know, because DNA testing is changing all the time, they're advancing all the time. Now they don't need a route. They can get DNA. Don't know how they do it. Get DNA. That's not my. You know what? That's not my job to know that anyway. My job is not to catch the kidnappers. My job is just to talk about it and raise awareness. And it's not even like it's a job. We're chatting about it because we're interested in it. True crime chats. That's what I do. And so the actual ins and outs of DNA technology, that's not something I know about or have to know about. But the important thing is the DNA technology is advancing all the time. Every day there's somebody else being, there'd be a lot of criminals out there that are thinking that they've got away with whatever they did 20, 30, even 40 years ago. And if the police departments have, preserved the evidence, there's a good chance now that people are going to be getting there on the door. Oh, do you remember this case from 40 years ago? You're under arrest. And that is a fantastic feeling. Like the Golden Gate killer, the serial killer, the ex-policeman, finally found, caught. Rex Human was caught from hair analysis, DNA analysis. So it is a miracle. DNA testing is a miracle, and it's improving all the time, isn't it? So, yeah. But yeah, you're right, Aristocrat's a very, very complicated case. And yeah, David, you're right. It could be a nothing burger. The hair could belong to anybody, couldn't it? Literally, whose hair is it? It might not be anyone connected. It could be some electrician that came in to do something. Now, it's thought to have been, it's a bit disconcerting that the hair was on her bed, in her bed sheets. The thought of anything, because he was in there for 40 odd minutes. What was he doing? Because normally if somebody breaks in someone's home, they'd be in and out as quickly as possible. Why were they in there 40 odd minutes? Maybe because Nancy put up a struggle. Maybe that's where maybe she had a heart attack. And it's like, oh shit, what are we going to do now? There's many possibilities, aren't there, of why they were in that house for 45 minutes. Around about 45 minutes. And the reason they know that is because that's when her pacemaker became detached, if you like, was linked, wasn't it, to the phone? And that's when it disconnected. So that's when they think it took Nancy away from the home. But what happened in that 40 odd minutes before that happened? It's horrible to think about, isn't it? I hope Nancy, whatever happened to her, if she is no longer with us, I hope to God, it just happened quick. Nancy was a religious person. If she has departed from this world, her belief would be that she'd be with her loved ones, in the next world. And, so that, how can I put this without it sounding awful? But to me, it's not the concern so much that she may be deceased, because it's what happened to her that's the most worrisome, isn't it? What she went through before, if she is deceased, what happened to her before then? That's what's, just haunts you. It haunts me anyway. That's why I'm on vapes. Anxiety, terrible anxiety after this case. I've been sort of talking about true crime for a long time, and and the cases that always affect me are normally children's cases. Really affect me. There's some cases I can't even talk about them because I know it will affect me too much. And Nancy's case, of course, I have talked about a lot, but I didn't realise how much it was going to affect me. I have to learn to sort of stand back from these things because I can't control it. Whatever happened to Nancy that night, it's happened. Anywhere she's even if it's in the next world. In fact, I feel like Nancy definitely will be okay. Although, of course, she is elderly and 84 is a good age for anyone. Still, having your life cut short, she could have had another 15, 20 years. Really? Well, 15, definitely. It's unusual for people to live to 100, but they do. So she was robbed all the same of life. And, this end of life, if you like, your golden years, as they call them, that's supposed to be when you have less problems, isn't it? You've brought your children up, you've gone through all that, you've probably gone through divorce, you've probably gone through bereavement, you name it, you've probably gone through it. And then in your golden years, you should at least be able to your own bed, your own bed in your own house. This is what makes me so angry. You could not get, oh, thank you, Sean. You could not get any more less high risk lifestyle. Thank you, Sean, for the super sticker. You could not get any more less high risk lifestyle than sleeping in your own bed. What else? What can you do that's more safe than that, or should be more safe than that? She wasn't out on the. I mean, you should be safe wherever you are. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that if you're out at 2 o'clock in the morning walking down the street, you shouldn't be safe. You should be safe wherever you are. Because people shouldn't commit violence against other people, whoever they are, children, elderly people, men, women, whatever. But people do. But, some lifestyles are more high risk than others. Some places you're more likely something to happen to than others. But if you cannot be safe in your own bed, in your own house, in the house you've lived in for 40 years, that you've brought your children up in, that you've been happily married in. That's why Nancy probably didn't want to leave her house. A lot of people are saying, like, she should have been made to leave the house and gone to live with Annie and Tommaso. You try and convince someone who's independent that they need to leave their house and go and live with you, or people just won't do it. People like their independence, don't they? Well, everyone's different personality. You'll get some personalities. Like, I often use my mum and dad as an example. My mum, if you would have offered her something, she was there like, oh, she hated being independent and on her own. That was her personality. But my daddy would do the opposite. There's no way. We were always trying to persuade him to move to a smaller place. And he'd say, oh yeah, I'll look into it. He never looked into it. And he wasn't interested in looking into it. He wanted to live where he'd brought his kids up, where he'd lived for years. A bit like Nancy, even though the house was getting too much from, especially when my mum got ill with dementia, it was all hard work for him. But he wasn't going to move anywhere else. It would have been, he would sort of say, oh yeah, I'll think about it, but he never would. So I don't think Nancy would. That was her personality. She liked being independent. She liked it. And she liked living in that house. And it's terrible that after all those years and everything she'd been through, she was doing nothing more dangerous than sleeping in her own bed. And that's what happened to her. Hi, Darren. Oh, I don't know how you manage, Vicky Sean. Well, do you know what? So, how I manage from you guys? Because there are times in true crime, I just take that off. Thank you again for that. There are times where I get very despondent about, stories or cases. I mean, this isn't the only one, there's loads. I do get very engrossed in cases. I do sort of, I don't know, feel it too much, really. That's just the way I am. But there are times when I think, why am I doing this? It's just, especially with Nancy's case, I've been up all night many times, looking at the news, watching streamers and, any little bit of nugget of information because so desperate for it to be sorted. And I do think sometimes, oh God, why am I even doing this? But, it is because of you guys, because, I know people appreciate what I do, and that's a nice feeling. When people leave me a nice comment, say something like that, yeah. So aristocratic is saying about and then there's the Epstein connection, possibly. I think, we need to remember that Savannah did interview the Epstein survivors. So listen, until we find out exactly what happened here, that's as good a theory as any, isn't it? We don't know what the reason is. Nancy was targeted for something, and I suppose to do with the Epstein files is just as likely as anything else, is it, at the moment? We don't know if it is connected through Savannah. Do you know what? You just don't know, because someone like Savannah who's famous, she only has to say the wrong thing, it could be a political thing she says, or it might not even be political. It might be someone who's obsessed with like in a romantic way. And it might be someone who's obsessed with Nancy in a romantic way. This is the other thing. Everything is possible. Or it could be someone with a grudge against Tommaso, a grudge against Danny, a grudge against Cameron. Until we know actually what happened, anything is literally on the table, isn't it? So anyway, just to finish off, I just want to say I really do feel, maybe I'm just being hopeful, right? But I think it's the lack of appeals from the FBI that makes me feel that they have got someone in mind, but they're just narrowing all the evidence down, and hopefully the DNA evidence will, link somebody definitively, because they can't arrest anyone. You've only got one chance, really, when it comes to arresting someone, isn't it? You've got to get it right, because if you don't get it right, when it comes to the trial, the defense is going to wipe the floor with you. So you've got to get everything right. And I think most detectives would say it's better to wait, even though it's frustrating for the family, for the public. So frustrating, isn't it? We want it all to be solved. But it's better to wait and take the time over it and do it right than rush into it, and then somebody ends up walking free because there's a technicality or something that wasn't quite done right, etc. Anyway, that's it. I finished. So I just wanted to come on and say that, because, I try and talk about Nancy as often as possible. Sometimes there's just nothing to say, but this in progress. I mean, I don't know what that means, but it's something, isn't it? And as soon as I hear anything about this case or any other that we're following, I will be back on. So don't forget to press that subscribe button and the notifications. And thank you again, Sean. That's very kind of you. Thank you. And I will see you all really soon in the next video, which probably won't be long. And until then, may your God go with you, and prayers for Nancy, that one way or another, this case is resolved soon. And Nancy's brought home one way or another. Thank you. Bye.